From the golden sands of the Nile Valley rose a line of rulers whose names would echo through history, shaping not only the destiny of ancient Egypt, but also leaving an imprint on the wider human story. These were the pharaohs, men and women, who were not merely kings and queens, but considered divine intermediaries between gods and mortals, guardians of order, and architects of some of the greatest monuments ever created. To the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh was not just a political leader, but the embodiment of Maat, the cosmic principle of truth, balance, and harmony that held the universe together. This divine kingship made every decree, every war, and every stone laid in a temple part of a sacred mission. Yet not all pharaohs were the same, and history remembers certain figures as transformational rulers. Leaders who broke traditions, introduced radical changes, or redefined Egypt's place in the ancient world. Their reigns were marked by bold decisions, sweeping reforms, and at times, dangerous gambles that shifted the trajectory of Egyptian civilization. As we journey into the world of these extraordinary leaders, we must first understand what it meant to be a pharaoh, and why their actions reverberated across centuries. From the earliest dynasties that unified the two lands of Upper and Lower Egypt, the pharaoh was viewed as the living Horus, destined to uphold the will of the gods and maintain Egypt's prosperity. The office of the pharaoh was hereditary, passed through royal bloodlines, but legitimacy was constantly reinforced by divine, ritual, and monumental building projects. Every obelisk raised and every pyramid constructed was not only a political statement, but a spiritual guarantee of eternal stability. Yet the sheer scale of their power also meant that their personal visions, whether ambitious, visionary, or reckless, could dramatically alter the course of history. Imagine a young ruler ascending the throne of Egypt, standing in the grand halls of a palace adorned with golden reliefs, with priests chanting praises and soldiers saluting in unison. The expectations were enormous: to secure Egypt's borders, expand its wealth, honor the gods, and preserve harmony among its people. Some pharaohs responded to this immense responsibility with extraordinary vision. They commissioned vast building programs that redefined the Egyptian landscape, turning deserts into cities of stone. Others reshaped religion itself, challenging traditions and sparking upheaval that still fascinates historians today. Still, others expanded Egypt's influence far beyond the Nile, marching armies into foreign lands and bringing back treasures, captives, and exotic goods that enriched the kingdom and strengthened its global presence. But the role of pharaoh was not only about glory. It was also a position fraught with peril. Egypt's prosperity depended on the yearly flooding of the Nile, and when harvests failed or foreign threats loomed, the people looked to their ruler for answers. Pharaohs who faltered could be remembered not as saviors but as tyrants, their legacies tarnished by famine, rebellion, or invasion. Yet it is in these moments of crisis that some pharaohs stood out the most, turning adversity into opportunity and etching their names into the eternal story of Egypt. These were leaders who dared to challenge the status quo, who envisioned Egypt not just as a kingdom of farmers and temples, but as a civilization destined for greatness. As we step into the stories of the pharaohs who changed history forever, we will meet rulers whose choices shaped the religion, politics, art, and international power of Egypt in ways that resonate even today. Some were conquerors, some were reformers, some were builders, and some were visionaries, but all left an indelible mark on the sands of time. Their reigns tell us not just about Egypt's past, but about the timeless challenges of leadership, the struggle between tradition and innovation, faith and politics, ambition and duty. By examining their lives and legacies, we begin to understand why these rulers are not just remembered, but revered, and why their impact stretches far beyond the Nile Valley to influence the story of civilization itself. Long before the Grand Pyramids of Giza pierced the sky, and before Egypt became a land of whirl-shaping dynasties, There was a moment of unification that transformed scattered settlements along the Nile into a single, powerful kingdom. At the heart of this transformation stood Narmer, also known to some historians as Menes, the pharaoh remembered as the first unifier of Upper and Lower Egypt. His reign, placed around 3100 BCE, marked the beginning of Egypt's dynastic period and laid the very foundation upon which all later pharaohs would build. To understand Narmer's significance, we must picture Egypt before unification, two lands, each with its own traditions, rulers, and symbols. Upper Egypt, stretching along the southern Nile Valley, was represented by the White Crown, while Lower Egypt, home to the fertile Delta region in the north, bore the Red Crown. These two regions often clashed, their rulers vying for dominance, until Narmer emerged as the leader who finally brought them together under one throne. The evidence of his accomplishment is captured in one of the most iconic artifacts of the ancient world, the Narmer Palette, a ceremonial stone carving discovered in Hierakonpolis. On one side, Narmer is depicted wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt as he strikes down a foe, symbolizing conquest. On the other, he dons the red crown of Lower Egypt, a clear representation of his rule over both lands. This dual imagery was no accident. It was a carefully crafted political message that announced a new order, the birth of a united Egypt. But Narmer's achievement was not merely military. Unifying two distinct cultures required diplomacy, ritual, and the creation of shared symbols that bound the people together. It was during his reign that the double crown, known as the Pshent, was introduced, a fusion of the white and red crowns representing the unity of Egypt. This symbol of dual authority would be worn by pharaohs for the next 3 millennia, reminding all who looked upon it that Egypt's strength lay in its unity. Narmer's unification also brought about administrative and cultural transformations. The establishment of Memphis, strategically located at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt, served as the new capital, ensuring the pharaoh's presence in both regions and solidifying control. This city would become a hub of governance, trade, and religion for centuries, a living testament to Narmer's vision. Moreover, unification allowed Egypt to harness the full power of the Nile. No longer divided by regional rivalries, the kingdom could now coordinate irrigation, agriculture, and trade on a grander scale. This brought stability, prosperity, and the resources needed for the monumental projects that would come in later dynasties. It was under Narmer's legacy that the concept of divine kingship began to take deeper root. By merging the gods and traditions of both Upper and Lower Egypt, he established the pharaoh as the embodiment of balance and cosmic order. To the people, Narmer was not simply a warlord or king. He was a bridge between gods and mortals, the guardian of the Nile's blessings, and the protector of Egypt's future. His actions set the precedent for all who followed. Every pharaoh after him claimed to be the maintainer of Maat, the divine order, a role first exemplified by the unifier himself. Without Narmer's decisive leadership, there would have been no great pyramids, no Valley of the Kings, no sprawling temples dedicated to the gods. The Egypt we marvel at today, the Egypt of colossal monuments, powerful dynasties, and timeless culture, was born the moment Upper and Lower Egypt became one. In a world where civilizations often rose and fell in isolation, Narmer's Egypt stood out as one of the earliest examples of centralized power, proving that unity could create not just survival, but greatness. His legacy echoes not only in the artifacts that bear his name, but in the enduring identity of Egypt itself, a land forever shaped by its first great pharaoh. If Narmer gave Egypt its unified identity, it was Djoser who gave Egypt its first true monument to eternity, a structure so revolutionary that it changed the course of architecture forever, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara. Reigning during the Third Dynasty, around 2670 BC, Djoser presided over a kingdom that was rapidly growing in strength and organization, and under his rule, Egypt entered a new era where kings began to immortalize their reigns not just in power, but in stone. Unlike earlier rulers who had been buried in mastabas, low, rectangular mud, brick tombs, Djoser envisioned something greater, a tomb that would rise toward the heavens, symbolizing his divine connection and eternal reign. To bring this vision to life, Djoser turned to his brilliant architect and vizier, Imhotep, a man whose genius would earn him near-mythical status in Egyptian history. Imhotep designed a structure unlike anything the world had ever seen, a towering, six-tiered pyramid built from massive limestone blocks, making it the world's first monumental stone building. Standing over 200 feet tall, the step pyramid was not merely a tomb. It was a statement of power, innovation, and divine authority. For the people of Egypt, its sheer size and permanence sent a clear message. Their pharaoh was not just a man, but a god who commanded resources, labor, and the favor of the heavens. The step pyramid was more than a single structure. It was part of an enormous mortuary complex that included courtyards, shrines, ceremonial halls, and boundary walls, all designed to serve the rituals that would secure Djoser's place in the afterlife. The complex reflected the Egyptians' deep belief that death was not an end but a continuation, and that the pharaoh, as the divine ruler, required an eternal home where his ka, or spirit, could reside forever. The design of the step pyramid also symbolized Egypt's emerging sense of grandeur and permanence. With each layer rising higher than the last, the pyramid represented a staircase to the heavens, a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. This imagery resonated deeply with the Egyptian world, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the mediator between gods and people. Beyond its spiritual significance, the step pyramid demonstrated Egypt's growing organizational and engineering capabilities. Constructing such a massive monument required careful planning, coordination, and the mobilization of thousands of workers. It showed that Egypt, under Djoser, had the resources and stability to undertake projects on a scale that few societies could even imagine at the time. The use of stone instead of mud, brick, marked a turning point in architecture, setting the stage for the even more ambitious pyramids that would define later dynasties. The step pyramid's enduring presence also ensured that Djoser's name would live on, his reign remembered not just through inscriptions or oral tradition, but through a monument that would dominate the horizon for millennia. Imhotep II achieved lasting fame, later worshipped as a god of wisdom, healing, and architecture. His vision turned Djoser's ambition into reality, and together they transformed Egypt's landscape forever. For the people of ancient Egypt, the construction of the step pyramid was a source of immense pride and awe. It was proof that their civilization was unlike any other, capable of creating wonders that would outlast time itself. For Djoser, it was the ultimate expression of his divine kingship, a declaration that even death could not diminish his power. The step pyramid became the model that future pharaohs would strive to surpass, igniting a tradition of monumental building that culminated in the Great Pyramid of Giza. In many ways, Djoser's decision to build in stone was as important to Egypt's legacy as Narmer's unification. It was the moment when Egypt declared to the world that it intended not just to rule, but to endure. Without Djoser's bold vision and Imhotep's genius, the iconic image of Egypt as the land of pyramids might never have come to be. And so, with the step pyramid rising above the desert sands, Egypt stepped into an age where kings measured their greatness not only by conquest or governance, but by the timeless monuments they left behind, monuments that still stand today as symbols of ambition, power, and divine eternity. If Djoser laid the foundations of pyramid building, it was Sneferu, the first king of the Fourth Dynasty, who elevated the art of construction to a level that defined Egypt's image for all time. Sneferu, who ruled around 2613–2589 BC, is often called the master builder, and for good reason. Unlike many pharaohs who were content with a single great monument, Sneferu experimented relentlessly, pushing his architects and laborers to test the limits of design, engineering, and ambition. His reign saw not one, not two, but three major pyramids rise from the desert sands, each a stepping stone in Egypt's journey toward perfection in monumental architecture. The first of these was the Medium Pyramid, begun as a step pyramid, and later transformed into a true pyramid with smooth sides. Though it partially collapsed in antiquity, its bold transformation marked an important moment in architectural experimentation, showing that Sneferu was not afraid to take risks in pursuit of greatness. Next came the bent pyramid at Dahshur, a striking structure whose sides change angle midway up, giving it its unique appearance. Scholars believe the angle was altered because the initial steep slope threatened to cause collapse, but instead of abandoning the project, Sneferu saw it through to completion. The result was a monument that stands to this day as a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to learn from mistakes. Finally came Sneferu's crowning achievement, the Red Pyramid, also at Dahshur. Built with a shallower angle to ensure stability, it became the first successful true pyramid in Egypt, with smooth, flat sides that reached toward the heavens in perfect geometry. Standing over 340 feet tall, the Red Pyramid was a triumph of planning and engineering, and it set the stage for the legendary Great Pyramid of Giza that would follow under Sneferu's son, Khufu. Sneferu's projects required immense resources, not only in terms of labor but also in materials. Tens of thousands of workers were mobilized, quarries were worked at a staggering pace, and logistical systems were developed to transport massive stone blocks across long distances. In the process, Egypt honed the organizational skills that would later make the construction of the Great Pyramid possible. For ordinary Egyptians, working on Sneferu's monuments was both a duty and a privilege, an opportunity to serve the divine ruler, whose greatness was reflected in the very stones they placed. Sneferu's ambitious building program also carried political and spiritual weight. By raising monuments on such a colossal scale, he reinforced the idea that the pharaoh was not merely a mortal ruler, but a divine figure whose power extended beyond death. Each pyramid was not just a tomb, but a symbolic mountain, a place where the king's spirit could ascend to join the gods in eternity. To the people, these towering structures were physical proof of divine order, stability, and prosperity under Sneferu's reign. The sheer scale of Sneferu's projects also broadcast Egypt's power to neighboring lands. At a time when other cultures were still constructing modest structures of wood or mud, brick, Egypt's gleaming stone pyramids must have appeared otherworldly, cementing its reputation as a civilization of unparalleled sophistication. Even today, visitors who stand before the bent or red pyramid cannot help but feel the awe and ambition that drove their construction. Sneferu's legacy extended far beyond his lifetime. His innovations paved the way for Khufu's Great Pyramid, often considered the pinnacle of ancient engineering. Without Sneferu's experiments, the successes and the failures, the iconic silhouette of the Giza Plateau might never have come to exist. In this way, Sneferu changed history not through conquest or reform, but through vision, determination, and an unyielding belief that the pharaoh's presence should be eternal. In the end, Sneferu was remembered not just as a ruler, but as a pioneer, the pharaoh who dared to imagine the impossible and then turned it into stone reality. His pyramids still stand as monuments to human ingenuity, ambition, and the enduring legacy of Egypt's kings who sought to build eternity itself. If Sneferu was the great experimenter, then his son Khufu became the master executor, immortalizing his reign through one of the most extraordinary achievements in human history, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built during the 4th dynasty around 2580 BC, Khufu's pyramid was more than just a tomb. It was a statement of absolute power, divine authority, and unmatched ambition. Rising to a height of nearly 481 feet when first completed, it remained the tallest human-made structure in the world for over 800 years, a feat that no other ancient civilization could rival. The sheer size and precision of the Great Pyramid astonish modern engineers even today, with its base covering more than 13 acres and aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal points of the compass. Constructed from an estimated 3 million limestone and granite blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, the logistics behind its creation remain one of the greatest enigmas in archaeology. How exactly the Egyptians managed to quarry, transport, and assemble such massive stones with Bronze Age tools is still debated, but one thing is certain: it required meticulous planning, a disciplined workforce, and an organizational system that demonstrated Egypt's sophistication as a state. For Khufu, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb, but a cosmic machine designed to secure his eternal life and ensure his divine journey to the stars. The pyramid's interior passageways and chambers, including the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the enigmatic Grand Gallery, were carefully aligned to celestial bodies, reinforcing the belief that the pharaoh was destined to ascend to the heavens and join the gods. The pyramid itself was once clad in smooth, white Tura limestone casing stones, polished to such brilliance that it reflected the sun's rays and shone like a beacon visible for miles across the desert. For the Egyptians, this was not only a dazzling sight, but also a symbolic reflection of Ra, the sun god, underscoring the divine nature of Khufu's rule. The workforce behind this colossal project was not, as popular myth suggests, made up of slaves, but rather tens of thousands of skilled laborers, artisans, and seasonal workers who were organized into crews and supplied with food, shelter, and medical care. Archaeological evidence from workers' villages near Giza shows that these laborers were well fed with bread, beer, and meat, suggesting a system where building the pyramid was seen as both a civic duty and a way to honor the divine king. The project not only reinforced Khufu's power, but also united the nation in a shared vision of monumental achievement. For contemporary Egyptians, the Great Pyramid was a miracle of their time, a visible reminder that their pharaoh commanded the earth, the heavens, and the people with divine authority. To later generations, it became the very symbol of Egypt itself, a wonder that inspired awe in all who laid eyes on it. Travelers from ancient Greece and Rome, centuries later, wrote in amazement about its scale, calling it one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a title it still holds. Yet, despite its grandeur, Khufu himself was remembered with a degree of ambivalence by his own people. Later traditions describe him as a harsh and demanding ruler, a pharaoh whose ambition overshadowed compassion. Whether this portrayal was historical reality or the result of later storytelling, it underscores the dual legacy of a ruler who achieved greatness at immense cost. The Great Pyramid remains Khufu's ultimate legacy, a structure that outlived not only his dynasty, but nearly every empire that followed in world history. Long after his name and reign were forgotten by many, the pyramid endured as a symbol of human ingenuity, ambition, and the eternal desire to reach for the divine. Even today, as millions of visitors stand before it in awe, the Great Pyramid continues to testify to the vision of a single ruler who dared to dream on a scale no one else had attempted. Khufu's pyramid was not simply a tomb, it was the embodiment of immortality, the lasting mark of a pharaoh who truly changed history forever. Following in the footsteps of his father Khufu, Pharaoh Khafre sought to leave his own indelible mark upon history, and he did so with a monument that still inspires awe and mystery, the Great Sphinx of Giza. Khafre, who reigned during the mid-26th century BCE, was the builder of the second pyramid at Giza, slightly smaller than Khufu's Great Pyramid, but still an imposing structure that stood as a testament to his power. Yet, it was not his pyramid alone that set his reign apart. It was his decision to create one of the most enigmatic and iconic symbols of ancient Egypt, the colossal Sphinx, carved from a single limestone outcrop that lay along the Giza Plateau. Stretching 240 feet in length and rising 66 feet into the air, the Sphinx bore the body of a lion, symbolizing strength and guardianship, combined with the head of a pharaoh, believed by most scholars to represent Khafre himself. This fusion of man and beast was not a random design. It was a powerful statement of divine kingship. The lion, as ruler of the animal world, merged with the pharaoh, ruler of the human world, to embody the idea that Khafre was both earthly king and godlike protector. A guardian not only of his own pyramid complex, but of the very kingdom he ruled. The Sphinx faced directly east, aligned with the rising sun, underscoring its spiritual connection to Ra, the sun god, and reinforcing Khafre's claim that his authority was sanctioned by the heavens. Just as Khufu's pyramid symbolized eternity, Khafre's Sphinx proclaimed vigilance, strength, and divine oversight. The Sphinx was more than an artistic creation. It was part of a carefully orchestrated landscape of power. Khafre's pyramid was flanked by a valley temple and causeway, where rituals were performed to honor the pharaoh in life and death, and the Sphinx stood as the eternal guardian of this sacred ground. Together, these monuments formed a cosmic tableau in which Khafre's reign was immortalized in stone, visible to all who approached from the Nile Valley. For ordinary Egyptians, such monuments were daily reminders of the pharaoh's sacred role as mediator between gods and humans and as protector of the land. Constructing the Sphinx was a feat in itself. Carving it directly from bedrock required immense labor and coordination, and like the pyramids, it was the work of skilled teams supported by a vast supply network. Archaeological evidence indicates that Khafre's reign continued the system of organized labor established under his father, ensuring that monumental construction was not an isolated endeavor, but a central aspect of Egypt's state identity. For the Egyptians, working on such projects was more than physical labor. It was participation in an eternal vision of order, harmony, and divine presence. The Sphinx's legacy, however, would grow far beyond Khafre's reign. In later periods, Egyptians regarded it with reverence, calling it Hor, Amak, Hit, or Horus in the horizon, associating it with powerful solar and protective deities. Kings of later dynasties restored and inscribed it, linking themselves to Khafre's legacy and drawing on the enduring power of the monument. Even millennia later, when the sands of the desert nearly buried it, the Sphinx remained an object of fascination, mystery, and reverence. To later generations, both Egyptian and foreign, it represented the riddle of Egypt itself, majestic, ancient, and inscrutable. Khafre's reign thus stands as a reminder that greatness was not measured only in size, but in symbolism. While Khufu built the largest pyramid, Khafre created an icon whose image has come to represent all of ancient Egypt in modern imagination. To this day, the Sphinx continues to inspire debate. Was it truly Khafre's likeness? Did it serve hidden ritual functions? What messages were encoded in its alignment with the stars and sun? Though many questions remain, what is beyond doubt is that Khafre ensured his reign would never be forgotten. His pyramid may be slightly smaller than his father's, but with the great Sphinx standing eternal guard, Khafre carved himself into the very identity of Egypt. His reign demonstrates that pharaohs shaped history not only through conquest or politics, but through the creation of symbols so powerful they transcended time. In this way, Khafre's decision to blend human ambition with divine guardianship changed how Egypt's kings projected themselves, setting the stage for future rulers who would continue to intertwine monumental art with royal ideology. The Great Sphinx, weathered yet unbroken, remains Khafre's silent testament across the ages, a face and form that watch eternally over the land of the Nile and remind the world of a pharaoh who dared to embody eternity itself. Among the long line of male rulers who dominated Egypt's throne, one extraordinary figure broke tradition and reshaped the meaning of kingship itself. Hatshepsut, the woman who became pharaoh and ruled Egypt with remarkable success during the 15th century BCE. Her story is one of ambition, brilliance, and resilience, a tale that challenged conventions and left behind a legacy so enduring that even attempts to erase her name from history could not succeed. Born into the royal family, Hatshepsut was the daughter of Thutmose I and married her half-brother Thutmose II, as was customary to preserve royal bloodlines. When her husband died young, the throne passed to his infant son, Thutmose III, who was too young to rule. Hatshepsut, initially acting as regent, gradually took on full power, eventually adopting all the titles, symbols, and regalia of a pharaoh. She wore the ceremonial beard, the royal kilt, and the headdress, presenting herself not merely as a queen mother, but as the legitimate king of Egypt. Her reign, which lasted more than 2 decades, was one of peace, prosperity, and innovation, proving that her gender was no barrier to greatness. Hatshepsut's most enduring achievement was her grand mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, an architectural masterpiece nestled against the cliffs on the west bank of the Nile near Luxor. Unlike the towering pyramids of earlier dynasties, her temple emphasized harmony with the natural landscape, its terraces and colonnades rising gracefully in symmetry with the cliffs behind them. The temple served not only as a place of worship for her cult, but also as a declaration of her vision as pharaoh, one rooted in stability, grandeur, and divine legitimacy. Its walls were adorned with vibrant reliefs that told the story of her reign, including her divine birth narrative, which claimed she was the daughter of the god Amun himself, thereby reinforcing her right to rule despite being a woman. Perhaps most famous among the temple's reliefs is the depiction of her expedition to Punt, a distant and mysterious land believed to be located along the Horn of Africa. This journey was not a military conquest, but a trading mission, reflecting Hatshepsut's emphasis on diplomacy, commerce, and cultural exchange. The expedition brought back exotic goods such as incense trees, gold, ivory, ebony, and myrrh, treasures that enriched Egypt and demonstrated the reach of its influence. The images carved in her temple vividly portray the exotic animals, plants, and people of Punt, offering a rare glimpse into Egypt's international connections during her reign. Hatshepsut's focus on economic growth, monumental building projects, and religious devotion helped secure Egypt's prosperity, making her reign one of stability and flourishing culture. She restored and built temples across the land, ensuring that her name and achievements were etched in stone from Thebes to Karnak. Yet, for all her accomplishments, Hatshepsut faced resistance both during and after her reign. Because she defied tradition by ruling as a female pharaoh, later rulers, possibly Thutmose III himself once he came of age, sought to erase her memory. Her statues were defaced, her name chiseled out from inscriptions, and her images replaced with those of male kings. This attempt at erasure was a powerful reminder of how deeply she had challenged the norms of pharaonic rule. However, history has a way of preserving greatness. Despite these efforts, her temple survived, her story endured, and today Hatshepsut is remembered as one of the most remarkable rulers in Egypt's history. She showed that pharaohs could wield power through trade and diplomacy as well as war, that legitimacy could be built on divine narrative as well as lineage, and that gender was not destiny when it came to ruling a kingdom. For modern audiences, Hatshepsut's reign offers a glimpse into the complexities of ancient power, how image, religion, and architecture worked together to construct authority, and how innovation could redefine tradition. She changed history by expanding what it meant to be a pharaoh, proving that leadership was measured not by convention, but by vision and achievement. Even as centuries of sand and silence sought to bury her memory, her temple still stands, radiant in the desert sun, proclaiming the story of a woman who dared to seize the throne of Egypt, and, in doing so, secured her place among the immortals of history. Few pharaohs in Egypt's long history caused as much upheaval and debate as Akhenaten, the so-called heretic king, who ruled in the 14th century BC during the 18th dynasty. Unlike his predecessors, who maintained the rich tapestry of Egyptian polytheism, Akhenaten sought to overturn centuries of tradition by elevating one god above all others, the Aten, represented by the radiant sun disk. This radical religious revolution shook Egypt's foundations, alienated powerful priesthoods, and left behind an enduring mystery that still captivates historians today. Born as Amenhotep Roman IV, he ascended the throne as a conventional ruler, but soon began to reveal his unorthodox vision. Around the 5th year of his reign, he abandoned the worship of Egypt's traditional gods, including Amun, the deity most closely associated with royal power, and redirected devotion solely to the Aten. In a dramatic gesture, he changed his name from Amenhotep, meaning Amun is satisfied, to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten, symbolizing his devotion to this new singular god. To fully embody his vision, Akhenaten moved Egypt's capital from the traditional seat of Thebes to a brand new city he ordered built in Middle Egypt, Akhenaten, known today as Amarna. This city was constructed rapidly on virgin land, untouched by earlier dynasties, symbolizing a fresh beginning for his religious order. Its temples were open-air structures, flooded with sunlight to reflect the Aten's rays, contrasting with the dark, mysterious sanctuaries of traditional Egyptian gods. Life at Amarna was revolutionary not only in religion, but also in art and culture. Sculptures and reliefs from this period break sharply from centuries of rigid Egyptian conventions. Instead of idealized, muscular pharaohs, Akhenaten is depicted with elongated features, narrow face, protruding belly, and slender limbs. His queen, Nefertiti, was equally central in these depictions, often shown alongside him in intimate family scenes with their daughters, a striking departure from the distant and formal imagery of earlier kings. This Amarna style humanized the royal family, portraying them as tender, affectionate figures basking in the life, giving rays of Aten, yet beneath this cultural vibrancy, trouble brewed. By dismantling Egypt's established priesthoods, particularly those serving Amun, Akhenaten dismantled the very power structure that had supported pharaohs for generations. The temples of Amun were closed, their wealth redirected to Aten's cult, and their priests stripped of influence. This sudden upheaval angered not only the clergy, but also large segments of society, who had long tied their identity and prosperity to Egypt's traditional gods. While Akhenaten poured resources into his new city and religion, evidence suggests that Egypt's military defenses weakened, foreign policy faltered, and provinces abroad slipped from control. The diplomatic letters found at Amarna reveal vassal states pleading for assistance as threats loomed, but many of their appeals appear to have gone unanswered. Egypt, once a dominant superpower under his predecessors, risked losing ground on the international stage. After Akhenaten's death, his radical experiment crumbled with astonishing speed. His successors, including the famous boy King Tutankhamun, abandoned Amarna, restored the capital to Thebes, and reinstated the old gods, particularly Amun, to their central positions. Akhenaten's monuments were dismantled, his name defaced, and his memory branded with shame as a warning against future challenges to tradition. Later Egyptians even omitted him from king lists, attempting to erase him from history altogether. And yet, despite these efforts, Akhenaten remains one of the most compelling and controversial figures in ancient history. Was he a visionary ahead of his time, glimpsing the power of monotheism long before it reshaped the world? Or was he a reckless dreamer whose obsession with religion blinded him to the political and military realities of empire? For modern audiences, his reign serves as a reminder of how fragile civilizations can be when leadership disrupts the delicate balance between tradition, religion, and statecraft. Akhenaten dared to reimagine Egypt's gods, art, and culture, and while his experiment failed in the short term, its boldness continues to fascinate thousands of years later. His story is not simply that of a failed ruler, but of a man who sought to change the very soul of Egypt, leaving behind one of history's greatest puzzles, a fleeting moment when the world's mightiest kingdom was ruled not by tradition, but by the vision of a single man staring into the blazing sun. When the young Tutankhamun took the throne of Egypt, he inherited not just a crown, but the burden of a fractured kingdom, reeling from Akhenaten's radical religious revolution. Known today as the Boy King, Tutankhamun ascended to power at around 9 years old, a child placed on the throne during one of Egypt's most turbulent times. Though his reign was relatively short, lasting less than a decade, the decisions made under his rule would prove crucial in healing the wounds left by his father's vision of Aten worship. Guided by powerful advisors and priests, Tutankhamun restored Egypt's spiritual heart by bringing back the traditional gods, reopening the great temples, and reviving rituals that had bound the nation together for centuries. Almost immediately after taking power, the boy king changed his name from Tutankhaten, which meant living image of Aten, to Tutankhamun, or living image of Ammon, signaling a clear rejection of his father's legacy and a return to the worship of Egypt's old deities. This symbolic act reassured the people and reinstated the authority of the Ammon priesthood, whose power and influence had been diminished under Akhenaten. With the temples reopened, offerings once again flowed, festivals resumed, and Egypt's gods reclaimed their central role in daily life, restoring a sense of stability and continuity to a shaken society. Politically, Tutankhamun's reign was guided by elder statesmen like I and the general Horemheb, who worked behind the scenes to rebuild Egypt's strength and re-establish order at home and abroad. Together, they reinforced Egypt's presence on the international stage, attempting to mend alliances weakened during Akhenaten's insular rule. Militarily, inscriptions suggest campaigns were launched to secure Egypt's borders and reassert control over territories that had slipped from the empire's grip. Though Tutankhamun himself was too young to lead armies, his reign marked the beginning of Egypt's slow recovery as a dominant power. Culturally, the restoration extended beyond religion to art and architecture. The rigid, elongated style of Amarna art faded away, replaced once again by the timeless, idealized depictions of pharaohs and gods that had defined Egypt for millennia. Temples and monuments resumed construction, reaffirming Egypt's grandeur and connection to tradition. Among these was work at Karnak and Luxor, where Tutankhamun left his mark despite his brief reign. Though his contributions were modest compared to great builders like Ramses II, his efforts symbolized the nation's return to normalcy. Tutankhamun's personal life, however, remains a subject of enduring fascination and mystery. He married Akhenaten, his half-sister and the daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, as was common among royals to preserve the divine bloodline. Evidence suggests their marriage faced tragedy, as mummified remains of stillborn daughters were found in his tomb, pointing to personal sorrow within the royal household. His sudden death around the age of 18 or 19 has fueled endless speculation, from theories of assassination to illness or genetic disorders. Yet it is not the details of his reign or even his death that made Tutankhamun the most famous pharaoh in modern memory, but rather the astonishing discovery of his nearly intact tomb in 1922 by Howard Carter. Hidden in the Valley of the Kings and preserved from the plunder that stripped most royal burials, Tutankhamun's tomb contained treasures beyond imagination: golden shrines, chariots, jewelry, and the iconic golden mask that has become a symbol of ancient Egypt itself. This discovery ignited a worldwide fascination with Egyptology, making Tutankhamun a global icon despite his relatively modest achievements in life. For the ancient Egyptians, however, his significance was profound not for his treasures but for his role in steering Egypt back to its traditions. In the wake of Akhenaten's divisive reign, Tutankhamun's return to orthodoxy helped heal a fractured nation and reaffirmed the enduring strength of Egypt's gods, culture, and people. Though his reign was short and his power limited by youth and advisors, Tutankhamun's legacy endures as a turning point, a bridge between disruption and restoration. His story reflects the resilience of Egypt, a civilization capable of weathering upheaval and rediscovering its identity. For modern audiences, Tutankhamun embodies both the fragility and grandeur of kingship. A boy who ruled an empire, restored a broken faith, and, through the accident of history and archaeology, achieved immortality not in temples or monuments, but in the awe he continues to inspire around the world. His name, once nearly erased, has outshined even the mightiest pharaohs, proving that sometimes the most unexpected figures leave the deepest marks on history.